Okay, so we've got another segment of my 1980 Yamaha IT175. Done a couple of little things, not too much. Managed to find a 6-volt light bulb for the back. It's a 6-volt system, so it's a strange little bulb. Little round globe with a bayonet style, so it's got a pin on either side and it pushes in and turns. Anyway, 6 volts are harder to find. It does have a replacement headlight in it. It's extremely bright, actually, surprising. But basically your light bulbs are your voltage regulator. The charge coil in the engine will make a lot of voltage, actually, a lot of power, and it relies on both bulbs to be functioning in order to get the voltage to be around where it needs to be. A few things going on. I've got a new uni air filter. I put it in there already. It's not oiled yet. I'm not going to run the bike. I put it in there so it doesn't get lost in the shop. We've got a carburetor bowl gasket here that's leaking. I have to order one of those up. I'm going to have to take this off anyways because I want to take the reed cage out of here. There's a set of reed valves in here. I want to get that cage out and I want to inspect the reeds, and if I have to replace them, I'll replace them. Should give me a little more bottom end grunt if they're tired. If I don't need to replace them, I can usually just flip them over and you get the proper tension, no air gaps. So that should be alright. We've got a new exhaust gasket in here. It was about 10 bucks. The springs were $11 or $12 each, actually, but the old ones were bagged out, and one of them was correct but just old and sagged out, and the other one was actually the wrong spring altogether, so it wasn't working too well. The head pipe was coming away from the cylinder, and you can see, get some light on there. You can see there's a bunch of spooge. That's the actual technical term for two-stroke oil buildup like that. Anyways, we're also going to drain that. The transmission's got 10W30 in it. Holds just over half a liter. Previous owner. Oh, well, I was going to say that this tube here is the transmission case breather. This aluminum piece just presses into the top of the case. Well, it was missing when I got the bike, and I guess over repeated washings, not for me, but the previous owner, water was filling up the transmission. So I drained the oil. It was full of water. I put some fresh oil in there and rode it for an hour or so one day and brought it home, drained the oil out, and there was still some water in it. So it's going to take some time to get that flushed out. And I've gone over the plastics. You can see that the colors don't quite match, which is quite normal and typical on these ITs. This is actually a different plastic than this, and over time, fuel discolors these tanks. Unfortunately, I've tried a few different repairs. You can see, I think the camera picks it up, but you can see some staining here. This tank is leaking. Still, it does have a crack in here, in behind. I'm going to have to replace it. It's a few $100 to replace that tank. There's a couple of companies that make it. Clark is one. DC Plastics is another. I'm going to have to find out which one I want and go ahead and buy a new tank. I might as well buy a new fuel petcock at the same time because it's not that good either. It's kind of hokey. It's worn from years of use. The bike's 40 years old, so things are going to wear out. When I was riding it, I noticed that the speedometer wasn't working. It's not a street legal bike, but it's nice to have a speedometer. It wasn't working. So what I've done is I've taken the cable out of the drive here on the front hub, and I hooked my drill to the end of the cable itself, and I spun it, and the speedometer actually does register speed. So the speedometer is working. I'm going to pull this front wheel off anyways. I don't want to inspect the brakes. I want to inspect the brake drum, and we'll see if I can get into that speedo hub. This hub here, this little separate piece, is what spins the speedometer. So I'll see if I can get that working. It's not critical. If I can get it working, I'll get it working, but it's a dirt bike. I'm not going to spend all kinds of money just to get a speedometer working that is basically useless. So we're going to check the spokes, make sure that they're all snugged up. We're going to check the wheel bearings, pull that axle out. I believe, yes, I've already changed the fork oil. That was last year. I should mention it's January now, so this is the time to start getting this stuff done. Judging by this adjuster here, it's adjusted pretty far out, and that tells me that the front brake linings are probably worn, and you got to keep adjusting this out farther and farther to get the brakes to contact the drum without having too much travel in your lever. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna have to order front brakes for it. Anyways, like I said, it's a 40-year-old bike. Things are gonna go wrong. Things are gonna be worn out. It does have a brand new knobby on the front. It's got a relatively new knobby on the back. I've already done a lot of work on the back here. These spokes were horrible. They were extremely loose and seized, and a new spoke set's like $100, so I managed to free them up and get them trued as well as I can. The tires, the rim is pretty straight, works okay, doesn't wobble. When I first got this bike, those spokes were so loose that the rim was wobbling all over the place. Couldn't even push it straight. So, all right, we're gonna get you set in the stand. I'll start pulling that front wheel off. I think that's where we'll start. We'll go from there. I've already replaced the levers. They were inexpensive. They were $10 a piece. The original ones were plastic and they were broken about halfway, so you could actually only get 2 fingers on them. That's not enough. So they do work pretty good. Like I said, they were inexpensive and they were okay. Oh, that's the original kill switch. It's a momentary switch. You just push it, kills the engine, and release it. But it wasn't any good, so just put an external one on here. Just wired it in. So I just pushed that to kill the motor, let it go, and it's good to go again. All right, let's get you in the stand and get started. Before we get you set in the stand here, I wanted to just run by real quick here what I've done to get this prepped. So I've got to pull that cable out. It's threaded into the brake hub here. Other bikes that I've worked on, this part here is not threaded. The threaded part of the adjuster actually just slides up and down in here, and you use a jam nut to secure it, get your adjustment. But whether it's supposed to be like that or not, we're going to find out once I get it all apart. But I've undone the clamp here at the fork tube. It's got a high-tech zip tie here holding it. We don't have to cut that. We can just slide the cable out. So what I did was I loosened the jam nut, and I screwed this all the way into the brake perch. And then you see they're slotted. Everything is slotted, so you can, now that there's slack in the cable, I am not left-handed, here we go. Now that there's slack in the cable, there was, this is extremely hard left-handed, or one-handed, there we go. The cable will come out, slide right through those slots, and then you can just tilt it, turn on an angle. Yep. Oh, see how easy this is? Hang on one second. There we go. That was a two-hander. So basically, the end of this, you just turn the cable so it's 90 degrees and it falls out the bottom of the handle. Okay, so the cable is now loose. The outside sheath is turning with the adjuster. I'm going to use a cable luber and lube this whole cable anyways. It actually moves nice and free. I'm just pulling it on the end with my fingers. Moves nice and free, but I'm going to squirt some lube in there anyways. Now at this point I can get you in the stand. I'm going to unscrew this from the brake hub. Actually, I can do it right now. Just going to unscrew this until it comes out of the brake hub. The whole cable is flopping around above now. Typically these will pivot down in here, but I'm not seeing it. It's old. It could just be full of rust and mud and crud from decades of use and abuse. You can see that that's slotted there as well, so the cable will just slide right out of it. I've already gone ahead and loosened that cotter pin. It's ready to come out. I've already taken the cotter pin out of the axle bolt, the axle shaft, so that's ready to go. We're almost there. One of the thread left. There we go. So, well, they can just slide right out. I'll take the cotter pin out. Discard it because I got new ones. There's a washer on the outside. Pin comes out. And that's it. Our cable is free. You can remove it from the high-tech zip tie. And we are going to put that aside carefully for later. We'll get the cable luber out and lube that up. Alright, now it's stand time. I'll get the axle out of there and we'll see what's going on inside. Alright, so you know that 22mm socket that comes in a set that you never use? Well, I think I just used mine for the first time. That's 22mm. These are called quick change axles. The rear axle is very similar. It's got a lever on the other side. It's nice to see that the shaft isn't seized in there. And it's just sliding out with hand pressure, so it's not seized in the bearing either. Well, let's give this a wiggle as I'm pushing it from the other side. This is going to get a nice cleaning and a general heavy coat of anti-seize when it goes back in, so it doesn't get seized in the bearing races. It's actually not very bad. It does have some rust on it, but that'll get cleaned up. Washer on there so we don't lose it. Put that to the side. Now our wheel should be free. There we are. The slot in this brake hub fits in a slot on the a tab on the fork so it doesn't rotate. If it wasn't located in place when you hit the brakes, the whole hub would roll. That would be a mess. Well, I'm pretty sure you can see there, so let's see what the brakes look like. Actually, they're not too bad. Drum's got a little bit of a rust ridge on it, but not too crazy bad. Let's get you a close-up. So what we're looking for here is looking for lining thickness, obviously. So this shiny part here is the aluminum backer, and above that is the friction material. There's lots there. Second thing we're looking for is separation. Let's see if it's come away or unglued from that backing plate. They're actually pretty good. There's not a lot of mud in here, which is nice. Still going to pull the shoes off. Everything is moving actually nice and free in here. There's a pivot that runs right through here. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to buzzer down on the wire wheel, and we're going to put some anti-seize in there. Put it back together. While I got it apart, might give this a nice little wipe and a quick paint job. Some satin black. We'll see. And it looks like that boss is definitely threaded. Alright. Well, I'm happy. They're only 20 bucks a set, but 20 bucks is still 20 bucks. Let's check the wheel bearing. You still looking at what I'm looking at? Yeah. So that's the one side wheel bearing. I'm just going to stick my finger in there and see if I'm going to roll the inside race just to see if I feel any notchiness. If it's not, those are actually nice. There's no rust on these, no dirt. I think these are new. Somebody's replaced these over the last little while. There's our Speedo drive. It's full of grease and crap and corruption. It might just be stuck because of that grease. Put that aside because we'll get to that. This is full of old goopy grease. Let's check this bearing. Nice, no notchiness, no rubbish. Seems to be all right. So there's 3 tabs here on the hub, 1, 2, and 3. And they drive, let's see if we can get a picture of that. We'll get the camera to focus maybe. Back it out. And just see them. 1, 2, and 3. Those tabs are supposed to spin these and drive the worm gear that drives the speedo cable. So I'm going to soak this, check for a seal. Yes, there's a seal there. And be careful with the seal, I don't want to damage it, but I'm going to probably soak this down in brake clean or something. We'll get all that old grease out of there, and we'll see if we can't get it to move. Grab a screwdriver here. Okay, well it rotates. That's not seized, but the gears may be bad in there. Won't know until we get it apart. Okay, I'm gonna get some of this stuff cleaned up and then I'll turn the camera back on. Okay, so where we're at with the speedo drive is in this orientation. First I had to remove this snap ring, and there's a flat washer, and this is that 3-leg dog that runs off that wheel hub, off the 3 notches on the hub that I showed you. And you can see that it's actually bent. I think what's happened at some point, somebody had that front wheel off, and sort of the dogs on the wheel are actually, they face this side, so they face the convex side. I think what happened was somebody put that speedo, had the wheel off and put the speedo drive on there at one point and just didn't realize you had to line these up and just kind of smacked it on there and tightened everything together and bent it. So that's bented. I'm going to straighten that out. The worm gear, where's my little screwdriver? There it is. I was able to get my screwdriver in the speedo drive, and I can get this to wiggle, which was a bonus. But the crown, that's the worm gear, that round gear there, that it was seized. It's supposed to pivot around this shaft. So this shaft is stationary, and that is a ring that pivots around there. So using my new favorite penetrating oil, this Seafoam Deep Creep has got to be some of the best stuff that I've used in recent years. It's not cheap, it's expensive, but I'm telling you, it works. I use Seafoam engine treatment. I use it for stabilizing fuel. I should mention off the bat here that I'm not sponsored in any way by Seafoam. However, I like the products. It works really, really good. This Deep Creep is excellent stuff. I don't know of any other penetrating oil that I've used recently that would actually get this done. So, anyways, what I did was I had to be very careful because I don't want to mangle the gear, but I've got this straight screwdriver that it has a shank built all the way through it, so it's like a punch, but it's nice and narrow. So I was able to get in there and let me get some of that oil out of there so you can see what's going on. Was able to get on the edge of the teeth and very carefully move it back and forth. I would knock it a couple of times clockwise, a couple of times counterclockwise, and eventually I saw a tiny little bit of movement. So let's see if we can get in there. This part is stationary. Let's get that. It's hard to see. This part is stationary. This part here with the flat on it rotates. There's a flat on this side, one on this side, and those, it's hard to see. Maybe I can get a little bit of contrasting background here. Oh, it's a lot easier to tell now. But there's actually flats on that ring. So those two flats line up with the flats on the worm gear, and That's what drives it. So anyways, back and forth a few times. I fill the cavity up with deep creep and let it sit for 5 minutes or so, and then I was able to eventually get it to turn nice and easy. So it turns pretty good. It's hard to do with a screwdriver, but yes, you get the idea. It actually turns. I was working it back and forth with this, and ended up working that gear so it came out, which is real nice because now I can get in there and get all that rusty stuff out of there and make it perfect. I can polish the shaft up so it's not dragging. And I think we'll have a working speedometer. Alright, that's it for this little piece, and we'll get back on the bike doing something else. Okay, so here's how we ended up with the speedo gear. Everything is, I got a little bit of lithium grease in there right now. Lithium grease, I like to use it in there because it's not affected by cold, so if I decide to run it in the fall or in the summer, it's really, the temperature is not going to affect it too much. So these are the three tabs that drive from the wheel hub. They get driven around, and you can see that worm gear is turning now, and it's nicely coated with grease. So this it's running pretty smooth. I'm happy with it. So I'm going to pack some more lithium grease in there, and then I'm going to drive the seal back in. I got this out very, very carefully, and was able to save it, didn't mangle it. So that's done. The axle has been cleaned down and got a coating of nickel anti-seize on it. There's one major reason why I use nickel anti-seize instead of the copper stuff is because this is what I have. I don't have copper in stock. I got the nickel, it gets nickel. The pivot shaft for the front brake, hub assembly, everything is perfect inside there. I'm not going to take it all apart. So I grabbed the lever and I pulled it down so the actuator was at 90 degrees from its current position, and I coated lithium grease on both sides. So that works. Let's see if I can get it with one hand now. It works very, very well. Very, very well. I used this cable luber, which I don't like. I don't like this thing. I mean, it works, but I don't know. I'm not a fan. It was cheap. And I lubed up that front brake cable. So we're going to get our wheel back on there. We're going to pull the inside of the speedo cable out. Should just be able to grip this. Give it a little bit of a wiggle and we'll pull that out and check how rusty it is. It's got a little bit of rust on there. I'll hit it with some penetrating oil and rub it down with a rag so it gets most of that out, and then we'll coat that with a nice coat of lithium grease as well. And pack a little lithium in there. Those are the three dogs I keep mentioning, the three little tabs that turn that speedo gear. And yeah, get our brakes together and throw it back in. Well, we have success. I put the wheel on there, got the axle nut torqued to 42 foot-pounds, that's the spec, new cotter pin, got our brake cable back in there, new cotter pin, made sure that the brake hub was in the notch that it's supposed to be. There's our speedo gear, speedo hub. I packed it all full of lithium grease, and then I packed underneath here and inside the base of this cable, the speedo cable with lithium grease, which I did pull out and I greased anyways. Hopefully, and I snugged this with pliers to make sure that this base was sitting flush on the top of that hub. Hopefully that'll keep water out. It is important when you put these on there, these have to remain stationary to the fork too, so there are locators for it. If you could see them. Those little two little flat areas there, sit flat against the fork. So that's done. Brake cable is on. There's two adjustments on these cables. There's an adjustment down here. It's your coarse adjustment, and there's an adjustment up here. That's your finer adjustment. So what you do is you run this one in as far as it goes, and then you shorten the cable. So you tighten it in there as far as you can, but only to the point where it still allows you to hook your cable into your lever and get it through these slots. If you go too tight on the bottom one, you're never going to be able to get the top one in. And what that does is if you set it up that way first, it gives you more adjustment here. So down the road, You can adjust it on the fly real easy, real quick. So that's all done and dusted. We'll boot back on there. We do have a few more things to do on this bike. I'm not sure how far I'm going to get today. We're going to end up cutting the ends out of these new grips at some point, because I got some guards, hand guards, to go in there. These are just cheapy Amazon ones. They were, I don't know, I got them on Kijiji, but they were brand new. He paid, I think he told me he paid like $30, $35 or something for them, Canadian. But they're a universal set, so they were black. I painted them yellow because, well, the bike is blue and yellow. So we still need to do the hand grip, or the guards. Oh, I should say, I spun the wheel by hand. Wasn't really fast enough, so I grabbed my air compressor and a blowgun, and I blew on the knobbies to get that tire to spin faster and faster. And I checked the speedometer, and I was able to get it up to about 20 kilometers an hour with the air compressor. So it is working. You actually see that the zero is moved from its stop, so the speedometer is working. How long it will work, I don't know. But we're gonna find out. Like I said, it's a dirt bike. Don't really need a speedometer, but if it's there, I'd like to see if I could fix it. Didn't cost me anything other than time. And I've mentioned and talked about pricing and doing it cheap on this. This is my own personal motorcycle, so if it was a customer's, then obviously there's a lot of little things that would be replaced. My own stuff, if I can get by, I'll get by. For customers, I'd rather put new parts on. That way they're happy. They're gonna work. There's a better chance that they're gonna work longer if I go that way, that route with the customer's machine. But as far as my own stuff goes, I'll get by if I can. I was thinking about painting the engine. Probably not gonna. It's not a restoration. I'm fixing it up so it looks half decent and it runs good. It's reliable. Got some loose wiring here. I'll put some split loom on there. Still got to get the carburetor off. You see we got a fuel leak again. Still, I've cleaned all this off with brake clean and wiped it. Fuel leaks. New tank, new petcock, new line, new base carb bowl gasket. Still got to get that off. We're going to take that reed plate out of there, the reed cage, and see what's going on. If we need new ones or flip them over. Or... yeah, so we've got a few more things left to do. I'm going to have a coffee and decide what I want to do next. Okay, so I'm going to try and explain the reed situation. I got the reed block out of the bike, and there definitely is some issues in here. Nothing like major. Don't have a piece broken off that flew through the engine or anything, but the reeds are definitely leaking. So see that light basically right in the middle of the screen there. That light, the little sliver of very bright light is coming through there. Those reeds are open. They shouldn't be. And it's like a two-stage pedal. There's that's the main one, and there's smaller ones below here that open at their lower flow, and it's hard to focus on them, but they're also open a little bit. And the top set here, that is definitely, you can see that it's canted upwards. You got light visible underneath the pedals. There shouldn't be any light. They're not in crazy bad condition, but that's that. What I'm going to do is, I mean, I could buy reeds for this. They're Boyson makes reeds. I could definitely buy a set. But I think what I'm going to do is, I'm going to try just taking them apart, cleaning them up, flipping them over, and putting them back down. Because they only really bend this way on this set, and they bend that way on the other set. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just take them out and flip them side to side. That way they'll be opposite of their normal flex. This is the intake boot. So the carburetor would be coming from the right hand side here. And then the cage part The actual reeds go into the engine. This sits on the back here. And that assembly goes down into the cylinder. So this is where we're at over here. Rather than taking a footage of me taking the carburetor off, because quite honestly I don't like to do it. It's a pain in the butt and usually involves some colorful language. So you can just get a glimpse of the piston there. I think that should be the piston. I don't think it's the cylinder. I can't tell from here, anyways. Yeah, that's what we'll do. I just got finished ordering my new gas tank. $250 US. And new fuel petcock was another 30. Same company that has the gas tank makes reproduction taillight lenses. I fit on here because every IT I've ever seen out in the wild does it busted off. So put a new one on there. So I'll get in the stand and almost like doing carburetor work. We'll come back over here and we'll have a look at these reeds and see what comes out of our attempt at salvaging them. Alright, can everybody see? Got everything where we need to? Alright, so taking the screws out. One side had Phillips screws, one side had little Allen keys in it. Allen screws, I don't know. Somebody's been in here. The bike's 40 years old. Somebody's been in here. It's just a matter of time before this stuff needs to be done. I don't think these are original. I really don't remember what was in these originally. Could have been even a stainless steel reed. These could be aftermarket reeds that were put in 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I really don't know. But anyways, this is the way that they come out. These were on, this was on there first, then these, and then the retainer. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to, one at a time, I'm going to take a rag and clean these as best as I can. And then the idea is that instead of putting this back on this side where it would have normally bent out, and these ones as well would have bent out, what's going to happen is I'm going to take these just like this and put them on this side. That way hopefully they'll be more, they'll tend to lean in instead of out. So let me get something on a rag here. We'll clean it all up. I'm going to clean the cage up. I'm going to put just a little skin of RTV sealer on this because I don't have a new gasket for it. It's vacuum leaks are bad in any engine, but these two-strokes tend to be very sensitive to intake leaks, to vacuum leaks. It does all kinds of weird stuff to them. On a four-stroke, if it's a tiny little vacuum leak, usually just you can crank out the adjustment at an idle screw and it'll be okay. The other thing to check out while we've got it apart here is to check to see how this intake boot is. There's some external cracking, but as long as they're not all the way through the rubber, we'll be okay. Alright, I'll get these cleaned up and then turn the camera back on. Well, we're back at the light bulb. I've got those reeds cleaned and flipped around. However, see the light coming through there on the top set? Oh, where are we here? Light coming through on the bottom set. Well, crap. Looks like I'm ordering a set of reeds. Boyson makes a set of reeds I can get from our local place. Well, not local, but it's a mail order place. Cage is good. Huh. Alright. $60 for a new set of reeds. Should wake up the bottom end of this old bike. It was worth a try. It cost nothing to try. I was prepared to buy new ones anyways. But it would have been nice to get away with it. It's nice when you get away with things. Alright. I'm going to regroup and figure out what I'm going to do from here.